What I'm about to tell you is shocking. In fact, it's so mind-boggling to be almost beyond human comprehension. At least for me it is. In India, 65 million people live in slums where basic health, sanitation, nutrition, and education have robbed millions of anything close to a normal life. Now get this, 47% of children, kids in those slums, are believed to be malnourished, many uneducated and many at risk of human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery. Tonight you'll meet a young man who has followed a call, and maybe after learning his story, you'll ask for a God-sized vision for whatever days he has planned for you. The great city of Mumbai, or Bombay in another age, is in many ways the Hollywood of India. It's the home of Bollywood movies that might be playing in the background of your favorite Indian restaurant. It's also a financial center for India and the world's 8th most populous city with some 20 million residents. But alongside glimmering skyscrapers and movie sets is a city that's been ravaged by flooding, ethnic and religious unrest, and deepening poverty. It's against that backdrop that our special guest, Biju Thampy, and his wife, Secunda, started Vision Rescue, an organization that works to free street children, kids on the street, from exploitation through education, mentoring, medical attention, and nutrition. But before Biju joins us from his Mumbai home, watch this.
India, home to over 1.2 billion individuals, with rapidly growing cities like Mumbai. The city of dreams. Metro cities such as Mumbai attract people from surrounding villages and towns looking to build a better life. However, due to overpopulation and neglect, many find quite the opposite of the life they once dreamt of. Still, in the Russian chaos, hope survives. All that is needed is a little encouragement, a fanning of flames, and the dreams can live on.
It was 1996 and I was coming through Mumbai, sitting in the rickshaw, and a whole bunch of kids came asking for food or money, and out of them one little girl around 6 years old really got my attention. She was very malnourished and kind of really hopeless look in her eyes. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't speak the language. So I took whatever change I had in my pocket and just gave it to her. Signal turned green and the rickshaw got moving. Out of curiosity, I just looked back and I saw an older girl coming and snatching this money from her. Very angry, frustrated, and felt very helpless. Didn't know what to do. Went back to my hotel room and kind of asked God, why do you allow this to happen? If you are there and if you are powerful and almighty, why do these kids have to go through such suffering and hopelessness? I really felt God was asking me, why don't you do something about it? That's where it all started, and that day changed my life. That 6-year-old girl who I never met again, I don't know her name, she changed my life.
This is 10 years back, like when I met Pastor Biju. He just shared his heart for the children who are living on the streets. And that time I told him, like, we will go to one of the location where there is lot of street children.
And we went to Mime station, bought some vada pav and sat on the platform and started feeding about 6 children.
And we told them, like, we are going to come back again tomorrow. And that way we kept going every day. And end of the month, we were having nearly 40 children.
So it was in 2006 that we got our first educational bus. So these children, they either do not go to school or they drop out at a very early age because of 2 reasons. One is they are not interested in education. And the second one, they are not confident they can make anything good out of their life. So what we do is we bring non-formal education to them, where we get them inside the bus. And when we teach them a few different subjects, out of which we want every one of these children to say, yes, I want to study, and yes, I can study.
In 2008, the first daycare center was also started right in the middle of the red light district of Mumbai. These kids were living in a high-risk environment where they were exposed and vulnerable to sexual abuse and trafficking.
Actually, a lot happened between 2009 and 2011. We introduced 2 more educational buses. We were able to have them and get them out on the road, impacting a lot more children. At the same time, we started our mobile medical and mobile dental units during those times.
We have a van, and this van goes to different locations where the drug addicts are there. And in this van, like most of the drug addicts come inside where we do the counseling. We help them come out of this drug addiction. Now in 2014, we are thinking outside the bus, and we are starting a community center where the community will be impacted and will be grown up.
Biju, this is just so moving and wonderful. Thank God for you. Welcome to State of Independence, first of all. Just glad to have you with us. Wish you could be right here in the studio with us, but this is fine. Just to be able to see you and to talk with you virtually is a blessing. How did this come to be your life's work? I mean, you know, in the United States, so many of us live in comfort, you know, affluence, compared to everybody else in the rest of the world. And it just amazes me that more people, when they realize this, that their hearts don't break and that they don't pour everything into trying to help kids like you and your wife have done. So just tell me your story. I mean, obviously you grew up in a family where there was a mother and a father and you were supported. Tell all of us about your upbringing.
Thank you very much, Joe. So good to be on your show. Thanks for this opportunity. And I grew up in the southernmost part of India in a state called Kerala, which is relatively affluent. Kerala is the most literate state in India. So I grew up in a pastor's home. So I was blessed and privileged to grow up in a home where, I grew up with the right values. My parents didn't have much when I was growing up. But even from a very young age, always poverty and exploitation made me angry. Even in the church or everywhere around me, people kind of saw poverty as normal. People, because you see it around all the time, you kind of consider it normal. But something within me said it's not normal. God did not create people to live like this. So I grew up, I wanted to get into business, make money, and do good work, support good work, because I never thought I could do anything like this. But God had a different plan. And I went to theological college in the UK, and I came back. And the more I read the Bible, I found out that if Jesus was here in this planet right now, he would be out there making a difference. Because the whole purpose of church or religion, according to the Bible, it's all about making a difference in people's lives. So if we lose our relevance in our community, if we do not make an impact in people's lives, I believe we lost the essence of being alive in this planet.
Yes.
So that has been something that's very close to my heart all the while. And like I said in that story, I came to Mumbai for some other work. When I saw that child, I asked God, why do you allow this to happen? And I felt God asked me, why do you allow this to happen? What are you going to do about this? So that was the turning point in my life. So I grew up, I got good education. I went to English speaking school, but that's not the case for majority of the people in India.
Wow. Yeah. So you see poverty all the time. It's all around you. It's almost been normalized. But you have the heart of Christ. You're a Christian person. and your heart breaks when you see people who are suffering. Mine does too. I'm surprised that that isn't the case for more of us who self-identify as Christian, that when you see people suffering, especially little kids, through no fault of their own, your heart has to break for them, and you've got to figure out, what can I do to help? You think of a 6-year-old girl, asking for money, and you wonder yourself, like, where are her parents? Where are the parents of these young people who are on the street begging for money, begging for food, who are malnourished and poorly dressed, and not in school? Do they have parents, or are their parents dead or unable to care for them?
Joe, so there are multiple cases. There are children who have run away from their homes because of poverty in their own homes, in their villages, and ended up on the streets. There are children off the streets, but majority of the children that we work with, they have migrated to the cities like Mumbai or Delhi or other cities from villages because of poverty, along with their parents. But these parents are not educated, they're illiterate. So a lot of these kids, most of these kids do have parents or single parents, but they have to go in search of work because they are not educated. They can't get a regular job. So every day they have to be out there looking for work, and they are not able to take care of the children. So these children, they end up on the streets. So by definition, children on the streets are children who spend more than 5 hours a day on the streets. So to answer your question, yes, they do have parents or single parents, but parents, they have to go out, look for work for them to survive.
Right.
And during the daytime, these kids are on the streets, they're begging, they're trying to sell things. And if a child is not in school, the child is on the street.
Right, and they have no adult supervision. That means there's no adult, nobody supervising them or watching over them to make sure that they're okay either.
Absolutely, there's no adult supervision there on the streets, or if there is supervision, that is by adults who encourage these children to go out and beg, because from a business point of view, you would give money to a child
right.
than an adult. So you would see people, begging racket is another thing here. There are multiple waves of slavery, and one of them is begging rackets. Little children are used, they are drugged, they've given cough syrup or something else, and they're always sleeping. So they are held in your hand, in people's hands, and people beg, and people look at these children and they feel good by giving them money. And a lot of these children are made to beg by begging rackets. So that's another thing that goes on. So giving money to them is not the answer. That does not solve the problem. The reason why these children have become victims is because somebody along the line, their parents or grandparents, somebody made a poor choice. Now, why would anybody make a poor choice? Because they were not aware of options. Right? They were not aware of options because they did not have access to information. That is because they were not educated. That is a logic behind the whole thing. So as a result of which these children have become victims, and they are on the streets, they don't have education, they are being exploited. Now, how do we change the cycle? Giving money to a child is not going to change anything. So we bring education to the children, by which we bring them, we give them access to information. When they have access to information, they will become aware of options, out of which they will make a good life choice, and their children will not be on the streets. So that is why in Vision Rescue, in the beginning, we did everything. But when we understood the problem, we thought we had to attack this problem at the root level. So our main focus is education. And this is why we do education.
That's wonderful. What a wonderful and thoughtful and encouraging thing. Did you have to buy a building for the kids to come to school? How much money did you need to invest to start this ministry?
That's the amazing thing. It's very little money. In the beginning, we didn't have any money. We started on the sidewalk. We had 40 rupees. That's like 50, 60 cents. I took that money out of, that's how we started. We bought some snacks. We began to feed the children. But we understood after some time we could feed them, but if we don't educate them, there is no go. So we didn't have any money. So we got the children on the sidewalk. We began to teach them. Then God opened the door for us to buy a bus. We turned the bus into a classroom. Then we did multiple locations. Then we had multiple buses. Then 2014, I really felt God speak to me and said, think outside the bus. So what we began to do is we began to go into these non-notified slum communities. They are illegal slums. So the government will not and cannot put a school or a hospital in these slums, because the moment you put a school or a hospital in the slums, it's equivalent to saying they're legalizing it. But people end up living in these slums for decades. So the biggest victims are children, because they're not able to go to school. If they have to go to school, they have to cross a busy highway or cross a railway line and go to school, which does not happen. So especially early education. So what we do is we go into these slum communities. We rent out rooms in the slums. We don't have any buildings of our own. We rent out rooms in these slums and we start education, because they're not able to get out. And as you know, until the age of 6, a child is learning to read.
Right.
But from the age of 6, a child is reading to learn. So if a child does not learn to read, at least by the age of 6 or 7, there is a very high probability that this child will never complete his or her education. So catching them at a very young age is the key. Yeah. So that is why we can't wait for them to come to school. We don't have time. When we work with children, we don't have the luxury of time to figure out or get the buildings. So we go right into these illegal slums, rent out rooms in the slums, and we transform them into classrooms, and we teach them in their own slums, in the classrooms. That's what we do.
Wow. Do any of the parents, are they changed by what they see happening with their children? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So many of the parents are now volunteering with us. So we have close to 400 community champions. We call them community champions. 311 very active community champions, and all of them are the mothers or parents of our children. So looking at the transformation in these children's lives, they themselves have come up and said, we want to give you 2 hours a day or more to work with you to transform our slum community. So that's one of the things that we do. So that's part of our workforce. So we have 130 full-time staff working with us, and we have 90 interns, and then we have 311 active, about 400 of them signed up, but 311 active community champions. We call them community champions. Then we have a whole range of university students and corporates who come to volunteer with us locally in Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, and Kolkata, in these 4 cities. That's our workforce.
That is just incredible. Imagine, look at what God has been able to do with you and your wife, beginning with no money and just trying to be faithful and just loving your neighbor like you love yourself. And it's turned into all this. What a blessing. When we return, I'll ask Biju to help us. That is Americans here who are living in affluence and comfort. You and me, in other words, to be able to recognize a call in our lives and be willing and able to say, like he did and his wife did, yes, send me. So stay with us.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
In 2004, Biju Thampy and his wife Secunda founded Vision Rescue in Mumbai to help free street children from being exploited. In 2006, they moved to Mumbai. Biju serves as vice president of the New India Church of God and also pastors Gateway Church. We're privileged to hear about his extraordinary mission tonight on State of Independence. Biju, what a blessing. I wonder, you've heard the statement in the Bible about the laborers being few. Why aren't more people in Mumbai, where you are, people who have means, who are wealthy, involved in trying to change the lives of these young people who are living in poverty on the street?
Joe, it's a fantastic question. When we live in a city, especially like Mumbai, where we see poverty and exploitation around us all the time, the natural tendency for us is to build a wall around us, and we get calloused, because otherwise we will live affected. If we just get affected by what we see around us, it will mess with your life, it will mess with your wallet, it will mess with your bank account. it will mess with your schedule. So most people who live in our city, who are affluent, you just get out, and on the way you give some money to a child that you see on the street. It makes you feel good that you have done something, but you just go on with your life. It's the same situation as the story of the Good Samaritan, the priest and the Levite. They thought to themselves, what will happen to me if I stop? Right? But the Good Samaritan thought, what will happen to him if I do not stop? So I believe if we do not think like the Good Samaritan, we can't make a difference. And my life is very uncomfortable. And I believe, comfort is a myth. How comfortable is comfortable? So we end up not doing anything because we, by nature, human beings, we tend to think about our security, our safety, our schedule, our time. That's a natural way of thinking. But I believe, as people who carry God's heart, God wants us to think differently. And we can only make a difference if we think differently. We can only make a difference if I put myself in that person's shoes and think, what if it was me? Or what if it was my child? That's what God spoke to me. If it was your child, and if you had the resource, would you do something? Then I would not be waiting for the police or the government. I would be getting out like a madman, and I would do everything possible, everything that I can to make sure that this child is safe and secure and moving forward. So that's a long answer to your question. Sorry.
No, it's a wonderful answer. It's the perfect answer, because it's that heart that the Lord requires of us. When that fellow asked Jesus, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said, what do the scriptures say? And he said, well, love the Lord my God with all my heart, and my neighbor is myself. And Jesus says, do this and you will live. And then he says, but who's my neighbor? And you just encapsulated it. That's exactly what it's about. To call yourself a Christian doesn't really mean much, especially if you're selfish, especially if your brand of Christianity is all about you and taking care of you and making sure that you're okay. But what the Lord requires of us is that we care about whether or not somebody else is okay. And we're supposed to have a heart that breaks when we see other people suffering, and then we're supposed to do something about it. What I love about what you and Secunda did is that you didn't even have resources. A lot of people say, well, I'll wait till I have the money and then I'll do something. But you started with nothing and just started loving people and helping them, and it grew, and then the money came. I'm guessing that the money came. You could probably still use more money, right?
So, Joe, I cannot say that I didn't have nothing. I had time, I had energy, I had knowledge. A lot of people just think only money. Don't wait for the money. Start with your time, start with your energy, look at what you have. You already have a lot. Start with what you have, and then God will provide what you don't have. So I believe when I can do what I can do, God will do what I cannot do. So that's been our story. And it's always been like that. So we just take stock of what we have, and we do the best with what we have, and God has always provided.
What a blessing. That's just the right attitude. You and your wife, I'm sure, have kids. Tell us about your family.
We have 3 boys. Timothy is 21. He will turn 22 next month. He just finished his engineering in data science. And Nathan, our second one, he finished his second year in university. He's doing music and production. And we have a 10-year-old Benjamin. He's in 6th grade.
Yeah.
So we live in Mumbai. We are blessed.
Yeah, you are blessed. You are blessed indeed. God has been so good to you. If you wanted people if there was somebody watching today who's really convicted by what you said and feels like, wow, I'm not doing enough. I could be doing so much more, and I would love to help my brother Biju and Secunda in their work in Mumbai. How could they do that? Is there an email address? I mean, a website or someplace they could go to support you?
Absolutely. Please, if you're watching from the US, please go to visionrescue.us, www.visionrescue.us. In that, you can find out about opportunities to volunteer, how you can get involved, to partner with us. You can find out all the different ways in which you can make a difference, not only with us at Vision Rescue, but we will help you to make a difference in your own community, in your own environment as well.
What has been your biggest encouragement in this work that God has given you to do, that you and your wife are doing so faithfully? What's been the biggest encouragement for you?
The biggest encouragement is to see children that we work with just move forward in life. You know, you have so many disappointments, but every time something like that happens, you get out and you see a young person who once have come in through one of our programs. They come and grab your hand and said, "Sir, thank you. I came into your bus. You educated me. Now I have a life. I have a job. I'm moving forward. I have a family." You know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You know, if you did not come to my community, if you did not come to my slum, I don't know if I would have been alive.
Yeah.
So just to hear something like that, that's all I need. I don't need anything else.
And in a few words, what would you say to somebody watching today who says, "Well, it's wonderful that Biju is doing this, but as for me, I'm just going to sit on the sideline. I'm going to continue just to go to church, and my world's not going to change." What would you say to them to encourage them to say, "Here am I, Lord, send me"? What would you say to them?
I would really encourage you to do something right in front of you. See, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. Amen. That's what really matters. It's not the big thing. It's the small things done with love, like Mother Teresa said. So God has kept people in your world whose lives can be different, transformed by one little act of kindness that you could do every day. If you look around, you will have opportunities all around you. So I want to encourage you to just step out and do something that is right in front of you, and the satisfaction and the joy that brings to you, you cannot trade that for $1 million.
Amen, brother. Amen. Well, that's all the time we have for today's State of Independence. I asked Biju to be our guest today because I thought that maybe, just maybe, he'd be precisely the voice you needed to hear in your life today. I know he encouraged me. Take a minute at the end of the show to drop me a line, if you can, in the comment box at joewatkins.org. That helps me and our team at Lighthouse TV know that we're fulfilling our mission to equip you to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. God willing, I'll see you next week.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.